Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Um, and if you hear of anybody that had intended to be part of this meeting was having any trouble with connectivity, I think we do have one person who's having difficulty maintaining their connection to the call. Please let me know, and I'll make sure to reach out to them myself. My name's Rachel, and I knew some of you from the Parent and Family Council. Some of you I may have met at parent orientation or via email or some other form of communication. And it's my pleasure to be the member of the Alumni Family Engagement team that really has the privilege of getting to work primarily with parents and families. And I wanted to just start out by thanking you for being a safe space for me to communicate a little bit of the story of my family and the challenges that we had over the last few years with uh, my own daughters encountering some trouble, if you will, with persistence, with staying in the game. And they did ultimately stay in the game. They both graduated from Whitworth, and we're really proud of those accomplishments for them. But I think it's a valuable thing for parents to be able to interact with one another and share from our perspective some of the challenges that we're seeing our students experience and that we're experiencing alongside them. And Whitworth has done a really great job this year in particular of uh, trying to get out in front of some of these challenges that students experience in terms of persistence. And one of the main things that they've done that I've been very excited about is hiring Tim Caldwell for this new role, or creating this role. Maybe that's a better way to put it, because Tim's been part of the community for quite some time. And I'm going to let him take it from here. But just so all of you know, if there are any follow-up questions, things that you don't think of during this presentation, during our Q&A session, please send them to me in an email, send them to Tim. We can make sure to follow up with you later. Meanwhile, feel free to type in the chat. You can go ahead and post your questions throughout the session, and I'll try and keep an eye on the chat. And or once we get to the point of having a verbal conversation, feel free to voice it here. And this is really a safe space for all of us to kind of communicate where we are with our students, where our students are at in terms of staying here. So great. Tim,
thanks so much, Rachel. I appreciate it. First off, just want to say thank you, everyone, for coming. I appreciate this. Like Rachel said, I've been in this role since July, and it has been so much fun because I get to try to solve problems. And I'm a curious person, and I love to try to solve problems and to try to figure out how do the problems intersect with each other. And so what I'll do here is I'll share my screen. Let's see, just a second. And hopefully you can see that now. For me, I'm in charge of student retention, but really student retention is a lot of, I like to think of it really as student persistence. And the idea with that is that persistence is a little bit more focused on individual students, where retention is kind of the big thing that Whitworth is trying to accomplish. And so for me, student persistence is a little bit a better name, but there sometimes can go, you can use either one, and they kind of mean a little bit of the same thing. So I wanted to start off with that. The other thing that I wanted just to say really quickly is that every student situation is uniquely different. And there's no one student, two students that are the same. And so I'm going to be talking about persistence and some of the questions that I get, and I'll be giving some thoughts or answers. But I'm going to be giving them from really that 50,000-foot view. And so there are better answers to give if we can drill down into specific situations, because every student has unique identifiers that make them different, like Rachel was saying with her kids versus other kids. And so just know that I'm going to be kind of wetting the whistle a little bit, but if you ever want to talk more or ask more questions, I'm definitely happy to do that. So, okay. I think this goes. So as we jump in, I wanted to sort of start with just a couple little things. My North Star in what is success at Whitworth. So for me, my North Star is the mission. What am I trying to do to students? What am I trying to get them to do? And I'm really trying to help each student get to where they want to go. And this is really important as I think about persistence and retention, because ultimately, and you all know this so well, you can't do it for your students. You can't make them really do anything anymore, right? Isn't that, it's infuriating. I want to tell them what to do. I know all the right answers, but we can't necessarily make them do that. And so my job, and really all of our job, is to help each student get to where they want to go. And what I love about that is it puts the onus on the student to a degree. Where does the student want to go? What are their goals? And oftentimes when I'm talking with students, they don't have the answers to those questions. They don't know where they want to go. They don't know what they want to do. And that's part of the reason they're thinking about leaving Whitworth, is that I don't have it all figured out. And so I will take a step back from that and talk a little bit more about that with them. But ultimately, I like to start here with, all right, where do you want to go, and what is happening in your world, and how do we kind of work with that? And so I'm always trying to help a student figure out where they want to go. And if that's at Whitworth, I love it. I think we do some things really well here. But ultimately, sometimes that's not at Whitworth. And that's okay too. If something else is a better fit and that's going to propel a student on to the best life that they can live, then I want them to do that. And so that's sort of my North Star as I talk with students. How can I help you get to where you want to go? The other thing I like to think about is, what makes a successful Whitworth student? And for me, as I've watched students, I've been working at Whitworth for about 13 years now in various roles, but success is this little formula that I have here. It's effort plus using effective strategies plus asking for help. The students that are successful at Whitworth do these three things really well. And you'll see at the bottom there in smaller type font, I say success is not perfection. And this is important because a lot of the students that I interact with, they come into my room and I'm doing an exit interview with them, and they'll say, Tim, I'm just not cut out for Whitworth. And I say, oh, help me understand. Tell me more about that. And they say, well, I'm really struggling academically. I say, yeah, okay. And I don't just get it. I don't just know what to do. And so I'm always trying to remind them that's part of this journey. You're not supposed to be perfect at something right when you start it. And actually, I think Whitworth is the exact opposite of that. We want the challenge and the struggle, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a bit. But this definition of success is sort of a through line through this presentation, right? It's putting the effort in. I can't put in the effort for the student. They've got to put the effort in. There's effective strategies. Okay, how am I studying? Am I using office hours? Am I using success coaching? All of these things that we have built in to help students, and then asking for help when that doesn't all work. Okay, man, maybe I need to go to the counseling centers. Maybe I need to go to the health center. Maybe I need to access some additional people, resources for help. And if I do those three things, I'm pretty sure that a student is going to be successful at Whitworth. So I'll expand a little bit more on this. So before I jump into some of the questions that I've prepared, I like to think about growth. And Wendell Berry is an author that I love, and he wrote a couple of books, Jabber Crow or Anna Coulter, these things like this. And he's always talking about growth and growing things on the farm and cultivating the land. And I love that language. It's stuff that I sort of buy into. And so I start to think about, okay, Wendell, you grow crops, you grow corn, you're talking about the land. What do I grow? What does Whitworth grow? And I think Whitworth, one of our goals is we're trying to grow adults. We're trying to help students who come to our university at various stages of adulting, and we're trying to help them. We have 4, 5, 6, maybe short years to get them ready. And every student comes in at a different place on this adulting spectrum, right? We've got students who've been in the military for 4 years and are coming to Whitworth. They're different than maybe the 17-year-old who's just out of high school. But we are trying to help them grow along that continuum, to help them be something better, to get ready for life after Whitworth. And so then I ask, okay, if I'm growing adults, how do I grow? What does that look like? And so Whitworth uses a thing called challenge and support. And I think if any of you attended Krista Maroney, who's my colleague from Residence Life, she talks sometimes a little bit about this. But there's this idea that in order for you to grow, you have to be pushed. And I I lament with students that I talk with all of the time because I ask them, when was the time that you felt yourself, that you grew, that you became something different, that you were really proud of? And inevitably, they tell me about something that was difficult for them. Oh, yeah, I tried out for the basketball team and it was super hard and I practiced all summer, but I made the team and I was really proud of it. Uh, for all of you who are on the call, right? Thinking about a time in life when you grew the most. For me, they almost always focus on things that were hard, right? Relationship difficulties, things that I didn't think I was going to be able to accomplish, but I ended up doing them, or things that were really hard. And just surviving them, I grew through that process, right? Losing a loved one, experiencing a separation, not meeting your goals. All of these things are hard, but I've come to believe that it is through the hard that you grow. Okay, so I'm going to say it again. It's through the hard that you grow. So what if then the hard is not to be avoided, but to be embraced as a way to grow, as a way to develop? If that's the case, then having a university that is difficult, that pushes you, that challenges you, is actually really important because it helps a student grow into that person that can leave the university and go impact the world for good, right? So this is some high thinking that I'm doing right now, and I'm kind of working my way backward. So we're trying to grow adults. We know that to grow, oftentimes you have to experience hard things. And so we try to challenge the student through the classes that we offer, through the experiences that they have with a roommate, right? Through the residence hall, through all of these things, they're experiencing challenge. And our goal is to push students and to challenge them. But our goal is not to break a student, right? That is not our goal. And that's where the support piece comes in. So challenge, challenge, challenge. And then when we get you to that point where you're like, wow, I am stretched really thin, then the support comes in and we wrap around and we try to support the student in the best ways that we can. It's important to know, again, I said this earlier, but every student is a unique lock that needs to be cracked. And so every student has a different threshold for challenge and support. And so it makes our jobs at the universities difficult because we're trying, there's not a one size fits all. There's not this, I know if I do this, this will be the outcome. And so we're really trying to have an individual relationship with lots of our students, pushing them, but then also supporting them when they're feeling stretched a little bit too far. That's really important because that sets the frame for the questions that we're going to talk about here next. And so these, I have, I think, 2, maybe 3 slides of questions. And these are questions that I get from parents all of the time and some from students. And so, again, what I'm hoping to do is to try to give you some context with regards to some of these questions that we get. The first one I've sort of already answered, but this semester was really hard on my student. Is it supposed to be that way? And the answer is, unfortunately, yeah, sort of. It is supposed to be hard. It's not supposed to be easy. They're not supposed to be perfect at the things that we're asking them to do. What I find that we work up against is that oftentimes, whether it's culture or society or family or whatever, there's this idea that if I'm not perfect at it already, I'm just going to give up and not even do it. Oh, and that is, I want to change that mind frame because, again, that's not how we grow. That's not how we learn. And I want students to face the really hard things here at Whitworth when they're surrounded by people like Rachel, or when they're surrounded by the area coordinators who are amazing individuals, or who the lunch lady in the dining hall. They all care. And so when you experience a hard thing in and amongst a community that cares, they can really help you get through that hard thing, as opposed to going through something hard when you're out in your first job or in your first relationship or on your own. So this is a place to struggle. And I think reframing that for students is really important for them. The next question I have here is, I don't think my student is flourishing. What should I do? And uh, I think it's got to be really hard as parents to try to see your student not flourishing, to know the things that you think worked for you or might work for them, and to not give them those answers. But that's exactly what I'm asking you to do, is not to give them the answers. And so my wife and I, who we've been married for 18 years, and we play this game, and the game is really a game based on my bad listening skills. All right. And so what I know is that I often jump to solving things for my wife. And so she says, Tim, let's play the exactly game. Okay. So the exactly game goes like this. she starts talking to me about all the things that are going on. And I cannot offer any solutions until I get her to say the word exactly. Oh, honey, it sounds like your boss is really difficult right now. It sounds like that class didn't go the way that you wanted. It sounds like you're really struggling with this, this, and this. Exactly. Okay. Once I get her to say the word exactly, that's my cue that I can now start asking some more open-ended questions, and I can reframe some of the things. Okay, exactly. Okay. So tell me a little bit more about the situation now that I understand. Help me. What do you think might make the biggest difference if we were to try something new? Right? All right, it sounds like you're really struggling. Is struggle a bad thing? Struggle a good thing? Oh, these are some questions, and again, they're not rocket science, but if you can slow yourself down enough, instead of just solving the problem because you know the answer, you know if they do this and this, it'll help and do that. You've been with them for 18 years, right? But the goal is not for you to give them the answer. The goal is for them to find the answer, and that's again where we're helping develop our students and helping them grow into adults. Another quote that I love with regards to this is inspiration will find you, but it will only find you if you are working. That's a Picasso quote. And for me, this is really important because our students are struggling and they feel lonely. They're struggling in class. But then when you ask them, well, what are you trying? What are you doing to connect? What are you doing? Well, I'm sitting in my room. Okay. Are you going to lunch with anyone? Well, I go and I put my headphones in. Okay. Do you feel like you're putting in the work to address the loneliness that you're feeling? Well, no, I thought it would just happen. It's not going to just happen. You've got to be putting in the work. And once you put in the work, little things, then oftentimes that's when the compounding starts, and that's when you start to make the breakthroughs. But that quote that reminds me of that is inspiration will find you, but it'll only find you if you're working. You've got to put in some work. It doesn't even need to be a ton, just a little bit. Next question, what do I do if my student wants to leave Whitworth? And again, this kind of goes back on the other ones, but it's, for me, curiosity is a superpower. If you can be curious about why they want to leave, and I put there in that second bullet point, why you want to leave is important. If you want to leave because you want to avoid pain or discomfort or frustration, you know what? For me, that's everywhere. There's difficult things in whatever I do. And so if you're looking to avoid something, I don't think that's necessarily the greatest reason to leave. There are some really good reasons to leave, but I think for you all, being curious about what those reasons are can be really, really helpful as you try to help your students process and think about what's going on and what's happening. And so as students come home and as you hear things over Christmas break about them, if you can be curious, that can be a really, really helpful thing. All right, a couple more questions here, and then I'll just kind of shift gears a little bit. But how can I help encourage my students to stick it out? This is a question I get all the time, right? Tim, I think Whitworth is great, but my student isn't loving it right now. They're struggling. What can I do to help them stick it out? I start with reminding them about their goals, and oftentimes, again, they don't know what their goals are, or they don't have the goals. And so then I spend some time thinking about those goals. And the goals that they're oftentimes thinking about when they talk to me, they're talking about goals in the next 6 months or the next 2 weeks or maybe the next year. And I'm trying to get them to think about goals 2 years down the road, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road. Where do you want to be? Where do you see yourself? And if you leave here, do you think that's going to position you to be in a place where you can achieve those goals? And if you think it is, then okay, right? Help you get to wherever you want to go. But if that's not, then let's talk about that. And so asking them what their goals are, asking them why they want to do what they're doing, and then reminding them that, for me, a lot of students that I talk to are transfer students, and they just think if I transfer to another institution, it'll all magically get better. And I want to ask them, well, what's going to be different there? And usually they say, well, I have a friend there, or I have this or that. Okay, is that going to solve all of those problems? I don't think it will. And what happens when you go off to get a job somewhere and that friend isn't there, right? And you need to make new friends or you need to build community. We're trying to teach you how to do that here and in this space. And sometimes you're not ready for that, and that's okay. But let's hopefully try to work them up to that point. For me, one of the things that I always try to tell students, involvement is one of the number one indicators of persistence. If they aren't involved in anything at Whitworth, then they're not going to enjoy their experience here. If they're just going to class and going back to their room, that's part of the education we offer, but the education that we're offering is really so many more things. It's about the programs going on in the evenings. It's about your residence hall experience, right? And it's about engaging. And I'm motivated by money. I'm the middle child of five. My dad was a social worker. We didn't have much money at all. And so when I realized how much money I was paying at the institution, I realized I need to take advantage of every little thing because I want to suck the marrow out of all of that I'm supposed to get from this. And now that's a different thing. That's the way I'm motivated. But understanding how your students are motivated and giving them something that roots them into that motivation is going to be really interesting and helpful there. And if they can get involved, that usually helps with some of those things. Getting through the first quarter of a book. This is also kind of a rule of thumb. I like to read, I do some things, but oftentimes when I read, the first quarter of a book is dull. It's the context. It's laying out the characters. It's doing these things. And so it's really the first, little bit that I have to make myself get through in order before I say I'm going to quit the book, before I say, oh, this isn't worth my time. So I often will give that to students as well. And I'll say, all right, students, you have to get through the first quarter of your college education before you decide that it's not for you. You have to get through at least the first year. And because what I know is that oftentimes that second semester is really when things start to click and students start to find those one or two other friends that might make the experience worth it. And so as you help your students to try to stick it out, encouraging them to get through the first quarter, the first fourth of their experience, which is that first year. And so that's a little thing that I would offer to you all that might be helpful. When you think about who should your students reach out to if they're struggling, this is part of the reason I love Whitworth and part of the reason I work here is because really all of us want to desperately help your students succeed. I shouldn't say all of us. There might be one or two out there that I haven't met. I can't speak for all of us, but I love coming alongside students, even students that leave the university. When they do an exit interview, I give every one of them my card. And I say, if in 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years, 30 years, if you ever have a question, reach out to me. I would love to be able to help you and serve you in any way possible. But advisors are really good at trying to help their students. We just had some data come back from our student satisfaction inventory. And one of the highest rated items that Whitworth has is that my advisor cares about me as a human being. And it's like, that's really good. I'm proud of Whitworth for that. Coaches, if your student's an athlete, their coaches care about them and want them to be successful. There's an area coordinator over every building, and that's a professional live-in person that cares about your student, that wants to help them. RAs, they're students, and so they're a little bit more hit or miss, but our RAs care about our students and want them to be helpful, want them to be served well. I'm someone that I always love it, when a parent reaches out to me and says, Tim, can my student come and talk to you? Absolutely. I would love to buy them coffee and hear about their experience and what's going on. Really, anyone that they feel supported by, they can reach out to. And if they don't have anyone that they're supported by, I would love to be that person. One of the questions I like to ask students as I go around campus is, who has your back? Who's got your back on campus? And if they don't have anyone, I've got your back, right? I want to be that person that has your back. And so we're always wanting to make sure that students know at least one other person, faculty, staff, or student that has their back, that is willing to do the hard things with them. Because again, that's what community is all about here. Some other resources that you should be aware of if your student's struggling. So we have a process called the early alert process. And this is a process that everyone can fill out. Parents can fill it out, faculty can fill it out, staff can fill it out, students can fill it out. You can fill it out for yourself. But this is really an easy way for the university to be notified that something might not be going well. And then literally every early alert that comes in is assigned to a person. And so I always have a case management group that I'm working on, and I'm reaching out to them, I'm texting them, I'm emailing them, I'm trying to randomly bump into them and introduce myself. Like, we try it all. And so we can't always communicate with parents what are those things that we are doing, because we do want to make sure that we're growing adults, right? And that privacy is respected. But you need to know that we are working very hard to try to appropriately come alongside your student and help them grow. And again, for me, one of the things that I'm always thinking is that I will always work as hard as a student is willing to work, but I won't ever work harder than a student, because if I work harder than a student, I'm teaching them the wrong things. I'm not setting them up for success after Whitworth. And so I'll often say to a student, I will meet, if you want to meet for breakfast every day this week, this semester, I will do that. I will meet you there. But as soon as you stop coming, I won't continue to go, right? Because I need you to put in that effort, to put in that work. And so that's part of what we're trying to do with this early alert system is we will reach out, we'll offer those connections, that support. But again, the student has to engage with us in order for us to really help them be successful. Just below this, I put the link for the early alert system. It's just so you have that. You can really just Google Whitworth early alert and you'll be taken to a page. There's 3 or 4 different types of early alerts. You can put any one of them in that you have access to and we'll route it to the right spot. So don't ever be too worried about that. The other link just below this is a link to our clubs and organizations at Whitworth. As I think about getting involved, one of the best places for students to get involved, if they don't know, is with a club or organization. It's usually low, it's not too difficult to get involved with, and it's usually pretty easy to get involved. And so low barriers for them with that. So that's important. I wanted you all just to know that we have those resources out there. So now kind of switching gears a little bit, why is persistence important? And this is the part that I geek out on a little bit because I love student affairs and I love kind of coming alongside. I believe that education absolutely changes lives. And I'm in the business of changing lives. And I think it does it in 2 ways. It does it individually and it does it communally. Individually, when students get a college degree from Whitworth, and you can get a college degree from lots of places, there's lots of good schools, but Whitworth does something really well, and I'll get to that in a second. But when you get your degree, you are a changed person when you leave Whitworth. You are not the same person that you entered as. And I think that that changes a student. But then when we change that student, what's also beautiful is that that student then changes the community. For any of you who've had upper level students, juniors, seniors, you know that when they come back for those junior, senior years, they are different. They are thinking different. They're interacting with you in a different way. They're interacting with their friends, their community. And I think Whitworth, this is that second point, the thing we do really well is we create students who honor God, follow Christ, and serve humanity. This is our mission, and I think we do it better than anyone. And I think the world needs people who honor God, follow Christ, and serve humanity. Whether you are a believer or not, that serving humanity piece is so compelling. And so I'm always encouraging our students to stick it out at Whitworth because I believe in the product that we deliver. And I know the type of students that graduate from Whitworth, and I want as many students to graduate from Whitworth as humanly possible. So then we get to your role, and we're sort of wrapping up. And so this is that point. If you have questions, you might want to write them down or be putting them in there because I've saved really the last 20, 30 minutes for questions if you have any. If you don't, that's fine. But hopefully there's some things that have piqued your curiosity. So what's your role? You want to encourage them to seek out resources early and get involved with something. It can be anything, student leadership, clubs and organizations. It could be just going to chapel. It could be going to there's 100 different things. And if your students get involved, they are more likely to persist at Whitworth. Help them identify the root cause of the problem, right? What's really going on? When I do exit interviews, I ask the question, if you could wave your magic wand and you could do anything and that thing would happen and you would stay, what would it be? I get all kinds of things. Oh man, if my mom and dad lived down the street, that would, or my family member lived down the street, I would stay. So you're actually sort of lonely. Okay, you miss family. Okay, right? Some students say, oh, finances. If you paid me $50,000, I would stay. Yep, you and me both. Okay, but what you're really telling me is that finances are tight and it's difficult. Okay, maybe we can think about that differently. How do we find a job? How do we get grants and things like that? So we're always trying to find that root of the problem that might be happening, and then addressing that root, not maybe what might be presenting on the surface. Encourage them to try a new approach or to seek help. again, this goes back to that perfection thing where students just think, oh, I showed up, I'm here, it should be happening. And I'm always trying to explore with them, what are the things you're doing to try to meet the goal that you have. And I'll tell you a story about Talia here in just a second. Talia is my niece, and so there's a fun story there. But if you can help them try new approaches and to set some goals, that usually helps them meet those goals and go from there. Don't give them the answer, encourage them to figure it out. We've talked about that. Set goals and help them stay motivated. This is my niece Talia is at a school. She's a first-year student at a school in Ohio where she lives. And she called me in October and said, Uncle Tim, I'm lonely. I said, oh, congratulations. You're exactly where you need, like that, you're right on track. And she said, Uncle Tim, what do you mean? I said, no, you're like, that's appropriate for where you are right now. And then I said, okay, tell me more, right? Help me understand. Well, I'm here and my roommate goes home every weekend. Okay. What else? That's about it, Uncle Tim. Okay. So then I know Talia loves gifts. Since she's a little girl, she loves getting a gift. So I said, Talia, okay, I've got a proposition for you. I want you and I are going to meet once a week on Zoom, and we're going to talk. And every week you need to come up with 2 things you're going to do to not be lonely. And I said, what do you think? She says, I said, I know. Here's the catch. If you do that for 3 weeks in a row, I'm going to send you the best care package you've ever received. And her eyes light up, right? Okay. And so we met for 3 weeks and we identified what's 2 things you're going to try this week not to be lonely. So she emailed her RD, her area coordinator, and set up a meeting with her and went to coffee with her. She kept her door open, but she said, oh, I'll keep my door open. I said, that's not good enough, Talia, not to get a care package. I need you, when anyone walks by, you have to say hello to them and ask them a question. Oh, Uncle Tim, that's so embarrassing. Yeah. Well, do you want to be lonely or not? Okay. So she tries it, right? She starts meeting some people. Every week she comes up for 3 weeks, these 2 different things, and then she talks to me about them. And I ask open-ended questions and get her to reflect. And at the end of those 3 weeks, I said, okay, what did you learn? She goes, I know what you're trying to do to me. You're telling me that I've got to put in the work. Yep, there you go. She's still there. She's doing well. She's made some friends. I'm so proud of my little niece Talia. So those are some things. How do you leverage the ways that love languages, motivation styles, any of those things, to get them to do the things that we know they need to do, but also helping them figure out what those things are. And then the last thing you can do is, fill out an early alert, letting us know what may be going on in ways that we can support and help your student there. That's helpful. I'm a fan. I was a college athlete. I like sports. I like competition. And I like watching the Rocky movies, even though they get sort of dumb after Rocky 2 or 3. But I think it's Rocky 5. There's this great quote in Rocky 5, and I heard it and I thought, oh, that's so good. And Rocky says it. He's talking to his son who's complaining. And Rocky says, it's not about how hard you can get hit by life, by school, by whatever. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. Oh, I love this idea, right? Life is hard. Life is difficult. Life is not fair. And oftentimes our students are wrestling with that, and they think it should be fair. They think it should be easy. I've done the right things. It's not. Your job is to keep moving forward no matter what the difficult thing is, using my definition of success, right? Effort, coping techniques, asking for help. That is what success is. And so whenever I talk with a student, I oftentimes bring up Rocky and thinking it's not about how hard you can get hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward, right? Moving forward. And sometimes moving forward is small. It's crawling. Right now, students are crawling to the finish line as they get through their finals and as they're exhausted. But that's okay. That's, as long as they keep moving forward, we're good. It's supposed to be hard. This is how you grow. And really, for me, this is the paradigm shift. If students thought, oh, this is going to be really, really difficult, and I need to use all of the resources I have available to me to be successful. That's how I want them to think about this. And when they face the difficult things, that doesn't mean you're not supposed to be here. That means you're exactly where you're supposed to be. You're supposed to fail. You're supposed to make some bad decisions while you're here, while you're supported with some good people. You can fail a test and still graduate from Whitworth. You don't have to be perfect. And so I'm always trying to encourage students in that way. What if we took that perfection away and just said, just do your best no matter what, and have fun? What would it look like to have fun? That you see the students when I talk with them, oh, they just breathe. What would it look like? Oh, it'd be this, it'd be that. Okay, now how do we get you there? Let's build that support system up. So that's really what I have for you all today. I hope that's, I know it's a, where am I at? Am I still sharing? I don't think I'm still sharing. Okay. It, it's the 5,000, 10,000 foot view. It's up there. And again, for every one of your students, you can tune in and go deeper and deeper and deeper into what makes them successful, or how to stick out at Whitworth, how to stick it out. But I wanted to at least give you some coping skills as students are coming home right now, and as you maybe are entering into these conversations with them, and hopefully reframe some of these things. So I saw some questions popping up. Rachel, what did I miss?
Okay, we have a question. What does Whitworth do to create class bonding? How do freshmen meet other freshmen that are not on their sports teams? Are there annual traditions, especially if they're not living with other freshmen or going to class with them?
Yeah. So Whitworth doesn't do, so some schools have like these class programs, right? Where it's like all the freshmen go and do this, all the sophomores go and do that. We don't do a lot of that. We do a lot at the beginning of the year at orientation, but sometimes students miss that, right? They're a little nervous and they don't totally engage in that. And so what we do, we don't necessarily even focus on first year to first year, but we focus on just community, because what I know is that if students make friends with upper class students who have been successful at Whitworth, oftentimes that increases the likelihood that they're going to be successful, right? And so if you're surrounding yourself with people, you want to surround yourself with the best, right? And that's really one of the lenses we use when we hire the resident assistants, is who are students that we think have been good at the game of Whitworth, and then how do we put them around other people so that hopefully some of that rubs off. And so we don't do a lot of class by class thing. What we do is the campus wide programming. And so oftentimes it's about going to the prime time in your residence hall, which happens every night in the residence halls. It's about going to the bigger programs and then connecting there. And I would say a lot of our upper division students, especially in the chapel, especially in student leadership, are looking to try to pour back into those first year students, but there's not always a great way to help them connect and do that. And so more than connecting them with other first year students, we like to connect them with just general sophomores or juniors. The other thing I would say is that over Jan term, this happens. What I know is that students who take Jan term and spring semester retain better than students who skip Jan term and just take the spring semester. And so I got to ask myself, what does Jan term do? Jan term is this magical unicorn of a space where you just take one or two classes and you get to meet different people from the first semester, and you've got all this time. And so what I do know is that on every floor, there's no like first year student who's the only first year student on their floor, right? We intentionally save spots. So there should be 5 or 6 or 7 at least first year students on a floor. Then the rest should be sophomores, juniors, or seniors, unless you're in Baldwin Jenkins, which is all first years, and that has its own pros and cons to that building. So yeah, so that's what I would say about that.
What method of communication are events to announce? For example, the Christmas tree lighting.
Yeah,
How was that promoted or announced? This particular parent student didn't know about it.
yeah, and
I
this is,
actually heard that from a few people too.
yeah,
That's like, I didn't
it's
know this was
actually
happening.
it's actually a really good, like, that's a great thing to be aware of. So everything that we do, we post, there's a master calendar, and it's on PiratePort, which is where all of our kind of like the students they go to PiratePort to log into Blackboard, which is our learning management system, to do classes. And so all of our events are hopefully, or a lot of them are posted on that master calendar. Those are big campus wide events, right? The tree lighting, typically athletic events, if there's an art show at the art gallery. Those are sort of the big things, the blood drives. And then really there's individual, there's floor and buildings, and those are more the Instagram. Each residence hall has an Instagram page, right? And they're a lot of times putting out information that way, and they're saying, hey, here you go, or on social media in some way. They also, a lot of RAs will write things on the mirrors in their bathroom is another way that they communicate. They're always looking to communicate. They put little flyers in the restrooms. And so if it's not a big event, then it's going to be more hodgepodge and looking at flyers and looking at more what your RA is telling you about or what is on the Instagram pages of the different residence halls and spaces there. But it's hard for us to always get all of the little things out to the different students. So yeah,
Well,
good
and
question. And I'm
also,
filing that one away for, okay, how do I do that better? That's a great one. So thank you.
I actually am filing it away too.
Yeah.
Yesterday was my birthday, and I had all of my kids at the table at one time, which was almost miraculous. And three of the kids at the table are recent Whitworth alumni, and they were commenting on how sometimes they would find out about activities the day before, and maybe they'd already planned a study session for that time and so forth, and wondered kind of the same thing. I will
Yeah.
say that often that it's not just a calendar that's in Pi Report. A lot of times those are accompanied with an announcement and a general invitation, and they can see it kind of in their news feed there. And even those will go out to students in the form of an email. As I distributed finals week care packages last week, discovered that texting seemed to be the best way to get the word out. There's limitations on how texting works, if they can opt out, and I'm limited to 300 characters, so I could only, give so much information to the students about that. But we're trying lots of different ways to communicate with students, and it's an ongoing challenge. So it's a
Yeah.
great question, and I'm making note of that as well. And there's a parent in this room who, in this virtual room, who shared with me recently about a drive that her student had home for Thanksgiving with an upper class student who encouraged them to make their own opportunities in terms of connection. And I think it really like goes to what Tim is describing
Mhm.
here. And that really stuck with me. I think that making your own opportunities, that's obviously easier said than done. I think like all of us know what it's like to have to um, go out of your comfort zone and be brave and reach out. One word that stuck out to me, Tim, and
Yeah.
I was wondering if you could speak to this. You mentioned being involved early.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us a little bit about the kind of process that a lot of students are going through that we're
Yeah.
maybe not aware of, and the timeline for that?
Yeah. Like, so with just getting involved in general.
Yeah, and making a decision about whether this is a place that they belong, and kind of the time frame that
Yeah,
happens
yeah,
for a lot of
yeah. Oh,
students.
yeah, perfect. So what we know, all the data suggests that students make a decision to leave a university, Whitworth and a lot of others, in the first 5 to 7 weeks of a semester. And so what we know is, right now I am crossing my fingers, and I'm hoping and praying that we did enough early in the semester. We front loaded a ton of things to try to answer the questions of students feeling like they belong and connected. We know that if we don't do that in the first 5 to 7 weeks, it's really hard, because once they make that decision, it's hard to go back on. They've made it. They've sort of given up. As I've done exit interviews with students, a lot of them said, yeah, I knew in the middle of September that I wasn't, and then I just pulled back. And so I didn't make any connections. I didn't go to sporting events. I didn't do the things. Oh, like, it always breaks my heart a little bit, because at that point, yeah, they've just sort of given up, isn't the right word, but just said, yeah, this isn't the place. And so the sooner they can get involved, the better. But I would also say Jan term is a resetting of everything. So Jan term happens and it sort of resets. You got people that go away, that you got people that aren't here. And then once the spring semester starts, it's like this reset of like, okay, you have the opportunities again to get connected. And at that point, what'll happen is sometimes students will say, yeah, I had a terrible semester academically. And they're finally ready to say, okay, I need more help. We love that, right? Yep. No problem. We can tuck you in. We'll get you connected with a success coach. We'll do this. We'll do that. So it doesn't, just because they missed the first 5 to 7 weeks of the fall semester, it doesn't mean, okay, that's just over. Now it resets every semester. And what's great about the reset is they're going to have classes with all new people. And so all of those friends that they made at the beginning out of necessity, especially if they're first year students, now they get to be exposed to, 150 new students that they didn't know that they might connect with on a different level, out of things that they have in common, as opposed to, I just need a friend to go to the dining hall with. And so that can be really good. Christy and Shane, I see that hand.
That's a Christy hand.
All right.
It's great to be with you all, even the people that we can't see. Shane and I, for those of you that don't know us, are members of the Parent and Family Council. I also am an alum of Whitworth, and I just wanted to pull out and speak to a couple things. We have a current sophomore and a committed freshman for next year at Whitworth. And Tim, something that you said about the sort of character piece of Whitworth,
yeah.
And I think that is so key, along with the academics, because we really are invested in the heart and the mind. And the Whitworth experience, if I could just share personally, is really a slow release experience. And you mentioned juniors and seniors coming home as different people. I know that I looked back and realized when I had children and when I had teenagers, how I parented was affected by and started by my Whitworth experience, and professors that spoke into me, mentors that spoke into me, mentors and teachers that I had at Whitworth are invested in our marriage and supporting our family all these years later. So that is a key piece of why Whitworth, and really what makes it set apart, that you aren't going to necessarily see the fruit of from September to mid-October of freshman year. The other point I wanted to make was on the multi-age friendships and having friends in different years. And I just talked to my sophomore about this the other night, and I said, lumping Jan term in, college is really 8 experiences. Like every semester kind of takes on its new form. You have a class you really connect with. You have a class that maybe is a stretch for you, and you meet other people, and they're these micro lives, and you're closer to some in the fall, and then you may not see them in the spring, and you meet new friends. And having friends in different years is also so key, because my son, I can tell you, has gotten great information of, you know what, your personality, Professor Jones and Professor Thompson teach this class, I bet you would connect with Thompson. Or I had Jones and this is my experience. So when he was a freshman, looking amongst his peers, it was really the blind leading the blind. But fortunately, he had some sophomore friends that he had made that really shaped his class selection and things like that. Of course, dovetailed with talking to us and his advisor and all of that. But it allows for a little different intel, I think, than just peer-to-peer in the freshman. And if they have a sophomore friend, the sophomore friend has stuck it out. So they can be a great encouragement that first year hump is something that can be worked through. So thank you for all you do.
Christy, I love that 8 different experiences, because that also, again, that if the first one didn't go well, or the second, like, you get to reset, and it's like you get to try it on again, or okay, that I bombed this semester.
It can be a reinvention.
Yeah, exactly, and that can be really fun. Good. What else, Rachel? Did I miss it? I haven't been reading.
Yeah, we do have another question here, and I won't even try and shorten it. I'll just read it.
Okay.
My student is going into her junior year and had a teacher this year who was not in class for over 4 weeks. The final had a lot of information that was not taught at all. How does Whitworth deal with this? Does Whitworth review the course evaluations, and how does Whitworth deal with professors that don't receive good course evaluations? Our student fears retaliation from this professor who is also her advisor.
Yeah. So the best thing for that, so there are difficulty things, right? Before this job, I was in student conduct, and so I got to interact with students who were going through some hard things on different levels. But we do have a process where we review all of our course evals, and those are typically not they're scrubbed for information before they're shared with the faculty. The other thing I would tell this student is that they should talk to the associate provost about their experience, and that associate provost is Stacy Hill. And Stacy is the kindest human being ever, who also just like knows so many things. And she's got like 3 daughters, I think 3 daughters and a boy, a son that are at Whitworth and having all different experiences. She just is great. She knows so many people, and she always listens, right? She might not tip her hand as what she's going to do, right? You might think, Stacy, but Stacy is pretty one of the best that we have. And so if you schedule a meeting with Stacy, that usually is really a helpful thing. And Stacy looks out for people. So, yep, that's what I would say.
For those of you who do have first-year students and you attended parent orientation, she was the one that gave some really helpful tips for how to engage our first-year students as parents. I was like, man, I wish I would have gotten this presentation a few years ago.
Yeah,
she's great.
Yeah.
Christy, I love your comment. Also on campus, campus jobs are a key and valuable way to get involved and build community. There are also many jobs that are major centric and can increase student enjoyment and growth. What are some of the stats, Tim, around student like experience and even developing resilience and not just job skills, but connections here at Whitworth if they're employed?
Yeah, I mean that if you're employed, I mean you have an extra group, an extra layer, because our staff and faculty love those students, right? I mean, we just up here in my office, we just took our student worker out for a Christmas lunch, right? And just to celebrate her. Like, she made it through her first semester. She was a freshman. We just hired her, and like, we love to be on that journey with them, right? And so we took her out to lunch and grilled her with questions and asked her how her experience was and all these things. So there's these things that we're doing, but we know that, again, it goes back to involvement. So whatever it is, however you get involved or however you get connected, then all of a sudden you have this support system, even if it's thin, even if it's not super deep, but you have these connections, and all of a sudden these people are looking out for you. I was meeting with a physics professor just the other day. We were having coffee, and I was talking to him, and I said, we were talking about students that struggle. And he's like, I can see it on their faces when they're in my classroom. And he said, I ask them to stay after. I just tell them, hey, I just know you're struggling, and I'm sorry. Is there anything I can do? And he says, like, just when he does that, like, you just see them kind of unload. And then he was telling me how, like, because of those classes and the students that work with him, they pray for their students before all of their like staff meetings or their faculty meetings. They identify 2 or 3 students and they just pray for them. And I thought, wow, like, that's super cool, And so any connections you get, whether it's, and I would even say just going to office hours of your faculty, if you just like, that is a form of connection. And so that's one of the things that I always encourage the students that I meet with to do is, even if you just go and say, hey, Dr. Schmidt, loved that joke today. Haha, like, even if it's just the little basic entry level, but then you start asking questions and you start connecting, then those faculty are looking out for you, and they're telling you about jobs that are coming open and all of these things. So that's really helpful. Yeah.
I actually was reflecting on my own student employment experience. I supervise 3 students currently, and it's kind of the highlight of my week. I love it when they're here. But as a student at Whitworth years ago, I developed relationships that were actually integral to why I'm back at Whitworth. Sometimes connection with staff members, because it's a touch point multiple times in a week. Typically, a student will come in and work, if it's Sodexo or if it's in one of the office, or custodial or grounds. Like, there are relationships that form in that employer student relationship dynamic that are really, really special. And so I was able to kind of go back to some of those relationships that were formed as a student employee, to reconnect with Whitworth about a year ago. So it is a great avenue for connection.
I saw one
Yeah.
question about what's planned for Jan term. So Jan
Yep.
term, because there's less classes, student government, as with the Associated Students of Whitworth University, plans a lot of extra events. And so they will do ski trips, they'll do snowshoeing. The UREC will also plan some weekend trips for students that are still around on campus. So really what the student needs to be doing is kind of looking. They need to go on the student government websites, the UREC's websites, or even if they don't know how to, they're like talking to their area coordinator. The area coordinators know, they might not know all of the things that are going on, but they know how to access that or where to point them. We funnel a lot of things to our area coordinators, and we ask them to disperse it as best as they can. So that would be another place that I would start if I'm struggling to find out what's going on. Just say, hey, area coordinator, like, what are the things that are coming up? Like, is there any way that you can send those to me, or tell me when to check my email, or any of those types of things? That can be helpful. So.
And then Courtney provided some feedback that I am definitely making note of, because I think that it's not just parents of athletes. Any students that come a week or two early because they're part of other types of programming, I think we can grow and improve our parent orientation component, if nothing else. I don't work in student life, and so I don't have as much to do with the coordination of student orientation. But I really appreciate the recognition that there are ways that we can help loop families in, who might miss the traditional move-in day.
Yeah. Yeah, Rachel, we can talk more about that. Like, I like that idea. Let's loop back around. That'll be good.
Yep.
Good.
Well, I want to be respectful and mindful of time. This has been a really good conversation. This video, I will probably get it up early next week. It takes a little while for me to do my editing that I have to do at the beginning, at the end usually, and upload it to YouTube. But I will be sending out an email to anybody that was here, making sure that you have the link. And this video will be available for anybody to see, who has interest in some of the ways that we can help our kids grow. So thanks
Thanks everyone for
everybody
coming. I
your time.
appreciate it. Fun conversation.
Thanks so much. And Merry Christmas. Bye-bye.